just received today.
Great to have you back, Carlos. We missed you in Brave CF71.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm happy and honored to be back.
Now, how's everything?
Good. Just fighting some personal challenges with health. Bit on a cherry pit and my tooth exploded. Then they had to extract it, and then it got infected, and I was on antibiotics and all of that, sweating, throwing up for days and days. So I'm happy to be back.
But you still showed up.
Still came.
Carlos
Still came,
Kramer.
no matter what, right? No matter what, we make it happen.
No, amazing. Brave CF72, I would say, how do you define it? It has to be the stars are born. There's a lot of stars that were born in Brave CF72. Amazing debuts. Amazing debut to Brave Combat Federation. Very excited. The fights were amazing. Where do we start? I have no idea.
Well, I thought Brave Combat Federation 71 couldn't have been topped with the quality we had. It set the bar so high, but then 72 comes along and not only matches but exceeds expectations. Like you say, you had debutantes going in, hype trains showing that they are very much the real deal. Guys who had achieved everything. There's so many wonderful narratives. Guys who had achieved everything they could in the amateur game, making the transition to pro seamlessly. You had veterans showing why they are the top of the tree. You had people fighting for the opportunity to fight in front of their home nation. You had absolutely everything, and just all these little storylines came together like tributaries running to the main river being Brave CF72. Incredible night of action from start to finish.
Definitely. And just that you mentioned about the fighter that conquered the amateur world, I have to speak about Rasul. It's funny how you could achieve everything in the amateur world, conquer the amateur scene. In combat sports, to become a wrestling champion, to become a combat sambo world champion, to become an IMAF world champion. And I think I'm excited to see him do his debut and win the way he won. But also what's really interesting is that it's time for him to be recognized for all his achievements. And I think this was a start for that, going into the pro level, especially in an organization like Brave Combat Federation, where the whole world is going to be watching him, see his achievement, and get that value back for all the great things he's achieved in the combat sports world. So just to touch on that as well, Kirik, I mean, we've noticed this many times that there's a lot of athletes that's achieved so much in the amateur world and still do not get the recognition for what they've achieved, and they have to come into the pro scene to get that recognition, although the achievement is nothing short of achieving anything else in the pro world.
It's absolutely true. I think that's true of combat sports. That's true of amateur sports and professional sports generally. There is undoubtedly fantastic basketball players in all kinds of obscure leagues all over the world, but nobody's going to know. And they're 18 years old. They came out of secondary school. They could be the next Michael Jackson. But until you get them in the pro league, nobody knows about it. And now everybody knows about Rasul Magomedov. I mean, that was just a...
Michael Jackson played basketball?
He had a good game, I heard.
Michael Jordan, I think.
Michael Jordan, Michael Jackson. I only follow combat sports.
One point.
Moonwalking into the cage. Michael Jackson.
One point I wanted to make about our sport. Anyone can play amateur football or amateur soccer for the uninitiated sitting here. Anyone can play.
Has to be football.
It's football, yeah.
Sorry.
Anyone can play amateur football. I've played Sunday League, okay? Anyone can do that. But mixed martial arts, the line between amateur and professional is so thin. An elite level amateur is a pro and all but name. Guys are doing 2-a-days. Guys are training with professionals. So I think the achievements that an amateur mixed martial artist makes, winning a world title, vastly eclipses that of any other amateur athlete. So I think we need to give appreciation, credence, and show a little bit of humility and really acknowledge the likes of Razul Magomedov for the world champion that he rightfully is.
Absolutely. And similar story with Mahsen as well, right? I mean, everything that is achieved at the amateur level for Wushu Sanda. And we've mentioned this before the event, the greatest of all times, in his sport. Unbelievable when we saw him fight yesterday. It was, I would say, crazy. I was not at the venue. I was sitting on the top level working on something. All I could hear was noises of every kick and punch that he's throwing. And I just sprinted back, saw what's happening, and I'm seeing Mahsen throwing kicks and punches. That's what was happening. And you could hear it. I think you could hear the noise outside of the stadium. And every punch, every kick that he threw, it was 100% full of power. Yeah. I was just wondering, can he do that second round, third round, continuously? You always know that you have to save a little bit of your energy when you fight, but if he's throwing every kick and every punch with 100% power, what do you think if he goes in the future to second round, third round? Can he maintain that? But if he can, he looks like he can. Yeah. But also the other question would be, would anybody else be able to go to that second round, third round taking those punishment?
That's the real interesting part.
I can answer that one. Yes, he can, because Wushu Sanda typically takes place not in a professional fight style where you've got a 6-week, 7-week, 8-week camp and you have a single fight. They're tournaments. So in that, he's used to fighting 8 times over a 3-day period. So for him, fighting 3 rounds is child's play. He's used to fighting literally over and over and over and over again. So yeah, he absolutely can keep landing shots with that kind of power. But as you said very rightly, is anybody going to make it to the third round with those kind of shots landing? I don't know. I can't wait to find out.
No, it's unbelievable. Even when his opponent was on the floor and he was throwing the ground and pound, he was throwing the punches, it was literally as if they were still standing and the punches was all in, full power, especially the kicks. It was a competition to catch up with the volume of their kicks for Carlos.
Yeah, really amazing. I mean, he lived up to everything that was thought of him before, the reputation, all his accolades that he's had, and just proved to Brave Nation what kind of caliber of fighter he is. I mean, and a lot of props have to go to KHK Team Bahrain head coach Eldar Eldaroff. I mean, he's just molding and shaping killers all across the board. And look out, because this guy is real. And I think he has the experience already and the conditioning that he can go into the second and third round. But you're right, who can hang with his shots?
Absolutely. Talking about Eldarov, I mean, we've spoke about the coaching, we've spoke about him as a fighter. He's an amazing fighter. I mean, there's no question about that. When you are the world champion, we know what kind of talent Eldar is. But when it comes to his coaching side of things, we've seen some of the best athletes competing around the world from Team KHK, and he's even yesterday he's had athletes from KHK competing in 3 different worlds while he was coaching here in Bahrain. But again, the fight that opened the event with Mohamed Zuhair, we knew he was a wonder kid. But always we have this issue in any sport. If you think about it, always the wonder kids are hyped and you don't see the result, and that's always this fear that everybody has when we try to protect athletes at that age when they are teenagers, and they have all the hype behind them, the achievements behind them, and we somehow expect them to be something special, or even we would like, in the media world, they would love them not to perform, because that could be another story as well.
Right, that's a good point.
But he showed, literally moving into doing his pro debut, I actually saw a lot of patience. It was not like an athlete. We know that he comes from the amateur world. We know that how much accomplishments he had from the amateur side of things, but the maturity that he showed, the composure that he had, I think that speaks a lot of big volumes of what Eldarov's coaching really is for an athlete at that age.
And he's really taken them and made them part of the family. You can see as they enter the cage, right? The like the train,
The cage
KHA Team Bahrain train going in, and it just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger every show that we have here in Bahrain, and you can just feel the atmosphere that every guy, no matter what, wants his teammate to do well and win, and they are as fired up as humanly possible at all times, and it's led by example by Eldar.
I'd like to hit on another footballing analogy because we're huge fans of football. We remember Freddie Adu, the Wonder Kid. He was an American soccer player, was going to take the scene by absolute storm. By 19, he was washed out. 14 years old, he had trials at Manchester United, Real Madrid, Barcelona. 19 years old, career's over. Mohamed Zahir Al Samia has accomplished pretty much more than any other amateur Arab fighter, transitions to the pro, and watching him as an amateur, I thought to myself, yes, he's achieving all these things, but his particular game is better suited to the professional ranks because he has that little bit more time to work because he's such a methodical, diligent student of the game, obviously under Eldar Eldarov. How could he not be? And if you wanted to show another young fighter how to conduct yourself in your professional debut, the level of composure, listening to your corner, the sequential movements from the striking to the clinch to the takedown, position before anything else, taking the mount, and during the fight, I counted in and around 60 unanswered blows from the mounted position. And it was just the ability and the forethought to know, if I keep landing these shots, I'm doing my job. They don't need to be concussive. They just need to elicit intelligent defense from my opponent, which the opponent was not doing. And I think at 19 years old, to have that level of fight IQ, that's incredible. Where's he going to be at 23?
Absolutely. Methodical approach for the fight you mentioned. A lot of people will look at that at the age of 19, the fight IQ, but also we know, and Kerrick, you can speak on this, when at that age doing the getting into his first pro fight, but what people don't take into account is that he's fighting in his home country,
Right.
in his home country, in Brave Combat Federation, founded in the Kingdom of Bahrain, and doing his pro debut. I'm sure that to be methodical and have that fight IQ and be composed while he's having all that pressure, that's going to add up, you know?
Yeah, it's brutal. As Phil frequently says during our broadcasts, pressure can do two things. It can crush you, or it can turn you into a diamond. And in Zuhair, we have a diamond. But when we're talking about Zuhair, I really feel duty bound to at least mention Hamza Kuhaji, the pride of Bahrain, because he set a path that the kids here didn't know existed. He set a path towards a world championship. He opened those gates. So literally and figuratively, when I saw Zuhair walk down, he was literally and figuratively walking down a path that Hamza Kuhaji built. And there's going to be generations of kids that come after it. But I had to throw the pride of Bahrain in there.
Absolutely. When we're talking about debut, one of the most impressive debut in Brave Combat Federation, Kubanza.
That's all you have to say is Kubanza. I mean, this guy, we were talking about before, what a freak athlete this man is. To be that big, that strong, and to be that athletic on top of it. I mean, the guy's doing backflips in the cage just from standing. He almost knocked my mic out of my hand with the backflip. But I just, it's the last thing you'd expect a guy that size to be able to do. And it just shows how incredibly powerful he is, because his head kick to end the fight was partially blocked. And he's still so strong, it just went straight through like a sledgehammer.
And I don't think he can do a backflip. He's forcing to make it happen. It's just happening. He's forcing it to happen. That's why you actually see that it's not someone, you have people who can actually do a backflip, and there's guys who are so physically strong and he can do whatever he wants, and he can whatever, and he's like, I will do a backflip because I can, and if my body's not allowing me to, I'll force it to make a backflip. And that's what he does. That's why you see him hanging in the air for 2 seconds while he's doing a backflip. It's not normal.
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely not a normal athlete right there. And to mix those all together in taking his record now to 4-0, I mean, he's definitely one to watch. He's exciting. He's dynamic. He's one of the hardest working guys around as well. And what we had talked with Kirik and Phil about what he came from to be actually here today, what the opportunities lie for him now. I mean, that's how Brave Combat Federation changes lives every day. And it starts at the top with His Highness Sheikh Khalid bin Ahmad Al Khalifa and yourself, the Hawk. It's been an incredible journey. And to be here since Brave won and to see the growth, looking back, it's incredible for what we've done. And huge props to you. Getting Hamza at the beginning, that's literally what it was at the beginning, you, His Highness, and Hamza.
Definitely Brave CF72, and we always say that everything that we're seeing with the achievement of mixed martial art, not just Brave as an organization, but when we talk about His Highness Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa's his work, his vision, and his leadership and his guidance in the sport of mixed martial art, we're actually talking about everything. When we talk about Team KHK, athletes competing around the world in top promotions from around the world as well, having the infrastructure to create that kind of talents in the country, the development program that is built around it that allows athletes like Mohamed Zohair at this young age have inspirations like Hamza Kohijis. All of that structure is one man's vision, and Brave Combat Federation today becoming the largest sports media property in the Middle East, the most global mixed martial organization in the world, and the largest sports development program in MMA organizations compared to any other MMA organizations. All of this is one man's vision, and it was from day one, and that's why you would see His Highness Sheikh Khalid at Brave CF1, and he was there at Brave CF72, and is always watching over, always looking at how can we improve, how can we get better, and what's the next step, and what needs to be done to definitely develop the sport. Every single day, every single year, we have to keep moving forward, not just as an organization or as a team or as an athlete. It's bigger than that. It's about the sport of mixed martial art. And I always say this, that we are blessed. And when I say we, I'm talking about the MMA industry is blessed to have His Highness Sheikh Khalid leading mixed martial art. And when I say leading mixed martial art, we all are leading our organizations, we're all leading our businesses, we're all leading our brands. But we cannot name one person today in our industry other than His Highness Sheikh Khalid who's leading the sport to the better future. And that's something that we're missing today. We had that before. Everybody, the sport was built by passion and love of mixed martial art. And 100%, and that's why, when they speak about Brave, I say that I could speak with chest and say that we have the team like yourself, Phil, Carlos Kramer, Kerrick. I mean, this wouldn't have happened without a team like this. Also our team like Valeria, Faith, Lucas, Joao, our team, every single one of us, we understand the passion, we understand the love for the sport, because the sport was built behind it. The sport is built behind it, but at some point, like every other family, every other company, every organization in the world, as it grows and as it becomes one of the biggest, fastest growing sport in the world, definitely you're going to go through a situation where we all have to look at our interests, and that's not a bad thing at all. You have to look at your interests because you have worked 20 years, 25 years, 30 years on something, and it's time to eat the fruits of it, Right. But when you reach that point, you look back and say, is that going to be something that in the next 50 years, the next generation cannot eat those fruit because you ate all of it, Would we reach to that point? And we are fragile as MMA organization because we developed ourselves, we did the reform from boxing, for sure, but that does not mean that we are in par or in line with other mega sports like football, like cricket, like NFLs or NBAs. We need to be in line with them, and I think that's where you need a leader like His Highness Sheikh Khalid, who's looking at not just Brave as an organization, not just supporting the International Mixed Martial Art Federation as a governing body or creating infrastructures in multiple countries or supporting athletes. It's a combination of all of it and bringing that into the industry where MMA media, MMA gyms, everybody, even MMA organizations and MMA federations from around the world can be a part of it. You will see that results happening when you saw in 2022 with the MMA Super Cup. We've never had MMA federations, national federations actually having an opportunity to get revenue through mixed martial art. We've never seen that. We had, I can't even count, I mean, you guys might know better how many co-promotions we have done with every country that we go to, rather than going to a country and competing with the local organization. Yeah. We collaborate with each other. And then, of course, we are a global organization where you can actually see us becoming a relevant organization for medias that does not have to be in USA today to become a big MMA media. More than half of the MMA media platforms around the world cannot travel to US for the big promotions to make sure that they get some of the best contents, because that is the biggest market. But what happens if there are media organizations in the Middle East, in India, in Central Asia? Today with Brave, they have a relevant product. So this structure that we've built is not just a structure for us, it's a structure that the whole industry of mixed martial art can come together. But yes, His Highness Sheikh Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa is leading the sport of mixed martial art, and personally, as a fighter, as a coach, as a promoter who's been part of every step of mixed martial art industry, it is a blessing for us to have that. And today, most of all, we really need it now.
And because of Sheikh Khalid, because of yourself, it's fighters looking after fighters is the bottom line at the end of the day. There's no bigger loyalty than a fighter who comes into Brave Combat Federation. No one brands that individual more, or no one markets that individual more than Brave Combat Federation. Like you said, we have people basically 24/7 working on, promoting the branding, social media, the whole bit. All they have to supply is the talent, and we'll take it from there.
Absolutely. No, definitely. And talking about Kubanza, just to go back to the machine, after the event, Kubanza came up to me and literally, I think it was that moment when I actually saw him in front of me in a touching distance that you really realize
How big he is,
how big he is, how
Absolute specimen.
He could be a bodybuilder.
In the cage, before the fight started, he pointed at the mat, the Brave logo, eyes fixed on his opponent, and said, "This is my house." Now, I said to Carrick at the time, when I go back to Ireland, if I go home, open my door, turn on my light, and he's sitting on my couch wearing my slippers and says, "This is my house," I will say, "I am sorry, sir," give him my keys and leave. That is the kind of aura that this man has. And that's something we spoke about with fighters, that yes, you can have all the skill in the world, but there are just certain fighters that have that intangible.
That it factor.
That it factor. Hamzat Chimaev, Hamzat Maiev, now Kubanza, Abdisalam Ulu Kubanichbek. Guys like that just have very different auras, but just that, again, that intangible.
Like Johnny Walker
Yeah,
as well.
exactly. Guys that have that little bit. And I think that, like, with Kubanza, he now is that beautiful marriage of just raw aggression, skill, power, mixed with a type of fighter that people want to watch. And you heard him on the mic as well. Yeah. He's got a little bit of swag as well. Like, he's a really good promo. So all those things married have just sort of gave us that prototypical modern mixed martial artist. I'm so excited that in Brave Combat Federation we have someone like that. We can now elevate him to the global stage around the world. We can take him places he's never been before. And I don't just mean with regards geographically. I mean with regards to his own life. It's the fact that he is now with us. It's life-changing. Again, absolutely indicative of what the vision is here at Brave Combat Federation. It's not just a rotisserie of this guy fights that guy, this guy fights that guy. We're building narratives. We're building narratives that will have long-lasting imprints upon the landscape of mixed martial arts. So credit, unquestionably, to yourself and our leader, Sheikh Khalid, for doing that. And it's in a different manner than most. And it's great. So, and being part of it and being able to call the fights, like I say, unreal.
And that's why there's two pleasures that I get from watching a Brave Combat Federation. One is when I see a performance like Kubanza, the promoter's hat falls in, right? And you're like, wow, I've got a superstar, right? And that's something great. But also the other pleasure is to see that the 82nd country is in Brave Combat Federation, and we have DRC now as a part of the list of countries that we've got into Brave Combat Federation as from the athlete's perspective. And to see, and what you spoke about him, I mean, the it factor, I think a lot of that it factor comes from something you cannot measure, and that is self-belief. And that's what I always say, that when we talk about Khamzat Chimaev, he didn't know weight classes. He thought he could. He was like, if there's an animal weight class, I'm taking that on, and that's and he really didn't know that didn't exist. I think he had no idea what the rules were. I don't think that anybody trained him for that. So that's the it factor that I see in Kubanza when you said that he pointed at the mat, the Brave logo, and he truly believes that he's the best, and he knows how good he is. He knows he has the talent. Like I said, if he can force a backflip to happen, that's the kind of mentality he has. But also, when you talk about belief, Kerry, self-belief, the importance of self-belief is one thing, but at the same time, when you have the energy of a lot of other people believing the same thing that you believe in yourself, and we saw the clips of people watching in DRC sitting, and they believe in him like exactly how he believes in himself. And how important is that for an athlete's growth and the future?
Oh, it was absolutely fantastic to watch those clips. And those clips were not from Kinshasa. They weren't from a big city. They're from his hometown, small place. And he still had tons of cheering fans watching the live stream. It was on Star. Well, Brave Combat Federation is on so many different broadcasts, I can't remember. One of the largest one in Africa is Star something or other. Yeah, thank you very much. That's what they were all watching on. And yeah, he's got a whole nation behind him. But the storyline for me was straight out of the Black Panther, the most popular superhero movie of all time, the Black Panther. What's the premise of the Black Panther? It's that there's a nation, Wakanda, that has figured out technology that nobody's figured out. Well, 93, this new sport came along where you combine boxing, jiu-jitsu, Muay Thai, and then you test it with no rules. And boom. But they started doing that in the present-day DRC in 1957. They were an anti-colonial movement. And so they didn't want it. They knew boxing and they knew wrestling from the West, but they wanted more. So they added in judo and karate from the East, and then they added in Labanda, which is their own wrestling style, and they made this art, Mukambusu, which means gorilla. So it was just like Wakanda. They had this technology that we figured out in 1993, and it took a while, but they've been doing it since 1957. I have a clip of Kubanza doing a left inside low kick into a knockout on a full-grown adult, a full-grown Congolese adult when he was 14 years old, and we saw him do it again. We were watching Mukambusu in the ring, and that was the global debut of this indigenous African form of martial arts. So for me, it was just huge. We've seen originally jiu-jitsu, and then wrestling came in, and then kickboxing, and then Muay Thai eventually got to Sambo with people like Fedor. But now there's this new art coming out of Africa, Mukambusu. And I think that alone is a huge story. And you add a figure in like him, literally a superhero figure. About a year ago, he was 105 kilograms. Just went home, hang out with his mother, eating her food, training a lot, went up to 105 kilograms. In King Kong, we do have a superhero.
Amazing.
And he was 150-0.
Oh, God.
That was the stat.
So for anybody that doesn't know Mukambusu, I talked about how it combines arts, but the way they refine it is by fighting with no gloves, no rules at all. You can headbutt, elbow, knee, choke, armbar. You can do anything you want. There's no mats. Sometimes they throw a big sheet of plastic on top of some sand. Sometimes you just fight. He started fighting when he was 14 years old against big adults. He had approximately 150 fights, and he never lost.
It's amazing.
That's scary. But to understand his power, I don't know if I saw it wrong. I have to. We just was still in the hangover of the event. I didn't get time to watch the fights, but I don't know if I saw it wrong. His head kick, the opponent blocked the head kick.
Yep. And it still went through.
Was that right?
100%.
Yeah, 100%.
I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
I saw it again this morning, and it was just unreal because you don't see it while you're seeing it. It doesn't look that powerful, but for him to break through like that, it's literally like a baseball bat coming at you.
Absolutely, and I also don't think that it was. I've seen people get knocked out with while they're having their hands up. It could be because you have the whole shin coming up and hitting. I think it was his foot that knocked with a head kick while it was being blocked.
Like, if that had been a clean head kick, we could have been looking at a decapitation.
Yeah.
That's the kind of power that he possesses. But in fights like that, we often talk about the finish. I also want to talk a little bit about what happened before the finish. His movement was gorgeous. He looked something akin to like an ice skater, the way he was switching stances, switching from the southpaw and orthodox. Obviously, I do my due diligence before fights. I get in contact with fighters. I talk to them all. He told me he was a southpaw. That's left-handed leaded fighter, or a right-handed jab leaded fighter. If I didn't know that because he had told me, I still wouldn't be able to tell you definitively if he was a southpaw or an orthodox. The comfort to switch was incredible, and the angles he was cutting. For a fan of MMA and a fan of the physical chess and the dynamic that is MMA, it was incredible.
He is a special talent.
Yes.
And when we speak about his movement, we talk about his strength, his striking ability. We're talking about super welterweight division. Kirik, in the division, you have Ahmed Laban, who moves, who's
Bruce Lee.
who's all of, yeah, he definitely likes to move, right? I mean, but then you also have strikers who are really good at striking, like Ismail Noradev. I mean, he's a high level striker. But Kamal Magomedov is also strong wrestlers. I mean, that's a weight class we're having Kubanza coming. I mean, what do you think would be the toughest or the best fight that within the roster that he should be going for?
I've got some news. I spoke with him late last night, and he's thinking, as I said, he was 105 kilograms, ripped, 105 kilograms, 8-pack, 105 kilograms about a year ago. He's thinking about moving down to super lightweight.
How?
Because this weight cut was so easy for him.
Wow.
That's incredible. But you see, you asked who's potentially next for him. Knowing Ahmed Laban the way we know Ahmed Laban, he will not be happy sitting at home listening to us wax lyrical about another fighter striking in his division. I think he will be thinking, a great striker in the division. I'm the best striker in that division. So potentially for the sake of ego and bragging rights, I would say Ahmed Laban would be very interested in a fight with Kubanza.
Definitely want to touch base too with his takedown defense too and his sprawl. He was really making his opponent pay for trying to take him down. You could see the strength. It was like an adult toying with a child. Really amazing to see. And man, it's like stopping those takedown attempts. Yeah. It's so frustrating to the opponent, right? Who's trying, so tiring, exhausting. And he just did it. I think he's well versed in all areas. And people don't talk about his wrestling or jiu-jitsu, but he is, I've been told, he has that on an elite level as well.
It's a recognized purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well.
True.
Showing just how well-rounded he is. And again, we speak about his attitude and his charisma. Speaking to him after the fight, he was saying, did you hear what my opponent said about me before the fight? Said, no. He goes, said because I don't have any fights on YouTube, I'm not a real fighter. And then he just looked at me and goes, now he can go on YouTube and see himself getting knocked out.
Yeah, he is great on the mic, but English is at least his third language. So he's great on the mic in languages. Did not grow up with it all. He actually grew up speaking French, and we do have a show coming up in France, and I know it's going to go well in Nantes, and we should have more shows after that. So I think the francophone market is a huge one, and he'd be a great way to enter that market.
I would love to see him fight in France. I would love to see him fight in every show, I think. So yeah, I think super lightweight, if he goes into super lightweight, interesting weight class, super welterweight, I think it's amazing. With Joelton as well, trying to move from super lightweight to super welter, trying to conquer two divisions. I think a very interesting addition to both, whichever weight class he chooses, I think. I mean, we'll leave it to Kubanza. I think he can do great in both the weight classes. And when we talk about super welter, when we say Ahmed Laban, Ismail Noradev, Kamal Magomedov, I mean, you see a lot of experience there. And I think what you mentioned about the 150 fights that is not there on YouTube, I think a lot of people should consider that when moving into fighting him. That the 4-0 is not the experience you're talking about.
Right.
There is a lot at the amateur level and non-sports level, let's say, behind him. But yeah, what a knockout! I mean, I've seen head kicks, but when you have somebody kicking with your foot and you defend it, and when you realize that there's no point defending it because you're still gonna get knocked out, what are you gonna do?
It's still coming through no matter what.
What are you gonna do?
Yeah.
How are you gonna coach for that?
You're just gonna have to ask somebody to, like, if you find like a really high level wrestler, but as you alluded to, Carlos, he hasn't shown the depth of his wrestling ability or his jiu-jitsu because he hasn't had to yet.
Right.
People don't realize he has that in his locker. So this is a guy that's even more dangerous than people who are watching him for the first time believe him to be. Because in the same way when Khamzat Chimaev made his debut with us, he looked like a pure striker. People didn't realize he was a national wrestling champion, multiple time Swedish national wrestling champion. This kid is, and I hate lumping pressure on a young fighter, but this isn't me speaking in hyperbole, this is truth. He has so many more attributes than any of us have seen yet.
I mean, when we speak highly of Kubanza, I think you could say that we are people who'd love to market an athlete, but when you can get that from a teammate, when you have Nkosi, who's actually going to be fighting for the bantamweight title, when you have a teammate and a fighter at that high level say that you've only seen the tip of the iceberg when we're talking about Kubanza, that speaks a lot.
Yeah, scary, limitless potential, and still a very, very young man. Like, you forget that he's not even into his peak years yet. Just a terrifying prospect, and there's not going to be a lot of hands shooting up right now to take a fight with that young man.
Definitely interesting weight class, but talking about the finishers, we've seen Rasul, Mahsen, Mahmoud Zuhair, and Kubanza with all the finishes giving us a really good start to the tournament, but then we've seen some amazing fights as well. I mean, when I saw the co-main event, for me, that was a dream for fight fans to watch and enjoy a fight of that magnitude. But then you also talk about the main event and the co-main event and the main event. I mean, both were equally one of the best fights I've seen. I mean, did you see the co-main event, Carlos? And you're looking at Idris of 8-0 entering to make that big statement, one of the biggest tests of his life, and what he got into the cage and faced. That's what finding the best fights from around the world is what we do as Brave. But to be at the co-main event and face someone at that level, how did you find the co-main event?
The co-main event was fabulous. It was, like Phil had said, this will probably help his career with the loss.
Undoubtedly.
Yeah, and that he'll dig deeper and know that it's not the easiest route as well, and there are other athletes at that level or better. I thought the co-main event was amazing. The entire fight card, I mean, we had 5 out of the 8 fights were stopped. We had knees ending fights, kicks ending fights, TKO due to strikes, knockouts. I mean, it was an amazing thing. And I know Gavashishvili looked so good, and a lot of people had him as a big underdog in that fight. So, I mean, the sky is the limit for him as well.
No, definitely, right? Like, okay, amazing to find that kind of special talents. I mean, flyweight division is going to be something else. Before the fight started, I tweeted that I think this fight in the co-main event, that's going to make some big changes in the flyweight division. And just talking about that, till now I've been saying Bidzini, because I couldn't pronounce his last name. Kirik, Phil, help me pronounce his last name. I think you guys can do it, because I think this is a name you should remember. That's it. There was once upon a time you couldn't pronounce Nurmagomedov, and now everybody can pronounce Nurmagomedov. And I think this name, we have to learn how to pronounce it. I can't have the next fight and not be able to pronounce it. So let the Brave Nation and the fans know how to pronounce his name.
Benzina Gabashilishvili. This is a name, like you say, you need to remember. Again, it illustrates the power of Brave Combat Federation. Just because you haven't heard of a fighter necessarily in the public domain does not mean he is not a potential global superstar. He came in as perhaps a little bit of the underdog. The shine was being given to Idrizov, coming in 8-0, undefeated, largely untested. Gabashilishvili did not read the script whatsoever. Came in and fought so tenaciously. He did not rest on reputation, ceremony, or laurel. He went in with one express intent, and that was to win the fight. But like I say, for Mohamed Idrizov, this potentially could be the best thing that happened to him. And for me, it was the best version of Idrizov that we've seen. In the first round, his boxing had improved immensely. And he needed this type of fight. He needed this type of test. And it may sound contrite to say he may have lost the battle, but I think as the years progress, we will see that he will win the war, because he will look at and identify what he needs to improve under the watchful eye of Eldar Eldarov. How could he not improve? And we see some fighters who lose one fight. Cyborg, for example, lost one fight in her career, one fight at the beginning of her career, went on to have an incredible career. Yeah. Sometimes careers are defined not necessarily by the wins, but by those losses that shape a fighter and really mold them into the world champion that they can become in the future.
No, definitely, but also we're talking about the co-main event, and although Idrisov, a lot to learn from it, was a test for him, a big test for him, but the fight was close. The fight was amazing. The fight was close,
yep.
And it was a fight that it was amazing. I mean, it could have gone either ways. It was back and forth, and I think there were people who even thought that Idrisov won, and there was people who even thought that Gavashilishvili.
Perfect.
Definitely, I think this is something we have to do a little more rehearsals on, but definitely it was a close fight. So I think Idrisov being in the flyweight division, and for Idrisov he could also take a lot of lessons in the sense that he also showcased that he is there with the top 5 in the division. Yeah. You know, and that's something that we have to look at and say that it was not a fight where it looked like there was somebody who's a different level than him.
Not at all. I'm looking at my notes. I had Mohamed Idrisov winning the first round clearly. I thought he barely won this. I thought the second round was very, very close, but I thought he won, and I had him losing the third round. I actually had him ahead. I had him winning the fight. He didn't. It was unanimous 29-28. The round that I thought went for him, clearly the judges saw it another way, and they're more focused than I was on who was winning. One thing I do want to say is that everybody now knows if you're fighting a KHK MMA Bahrain fighter, you're going to get a fair decision. In this case, I thought he won. All 3 judges said, no, he didn't. He lost. It was unquestionably a very close, very, very close fight. If there was any bias whatsoever, the decision could have gone to him, but it didn't. And I just want to say that to any fighter globally who's listening. If you fight a KHK MMA fighter, you are going to get treated not just fairly, but perfectly fairly.
That's why we call Bahrain the Combat Kingdom. It's always about bringing the best around the world and competing. It's all about the competition. Yeah, it was... so flyweight division...
Wide open with Veli Murad moving up to bantamweight, Shorty Torres moving up to bantamweight. I believe both fighters will stay there, and there's a potential collision path going on there. But flyweight now is really primed for a fighter to make a statement, place himself front and center as the forerunner in that division. And some people, they're not keen on flyweight fights. They don't like seeing a guy who they think they could potentially beat up. A shorter guy, a guy who's 5'5", 125 pounds. But what they perhaps may lack in that stature, they more than make up for in technical ability and cardio. Flyweight is one of my favourite divisions, if not my favourite division in Brave Combat Federation, because if you want to see a fight that is full of beautiful technical nuance, You watch a flyweight fight.
Yeah, exactly. It's like gymnastics. There's nobody who moves better than a gymnast, and they're all tiny. Gymnasts are all, they come up to about here on me. And you get the exact same thing in mixed martial arts. By the time you get up to heavyweight, usually there's some exceptions, including one we saw last night. By the time you get to heavyweight, the fighters tend not to be highly skilled, and it just gets better and better. You go to light heavyweight, you go to welterweight, you're like, oh my God. But by the time you get to flyweight, it's like a mix of gymnastics and a kung fu movie and a fight all at one. Yeah, it's the most technical division, and it is amazing to watch.
But at the same time, when we say the technical aspect of flyweight division, but we also have to, when you look at flyweight fights, the pace that the fight goes in. I mean, it's so fast, and we're looking at, if you look at the fight between the main co-main event, where did that fight, when you looked at the second round and you said that barely Idrisov won for you, where did that decision, I mean, we're not judges, but if you look at it, where do you think the fight was won or lost? Because there was takedowns happening, multiple takedowns happening, but the takedowns were takedowns and the immediate stand-ups. So you think when you look at it and you see multiple takedowns, do you look like that round is won by the guy who's giving the takedowns? But then you're looking and saying that, do I give credit to the takedowns if the person is standing up, or was it the cage control? I think there was a lot of cage control as well.
For me personally, it was cage control and aggression. So for me, I believe that Gavashilishvili was the more tenacious fighter, even if he wasn't in a very, very close fight where it is an even split in that second round. He was the guy that was pushing the action a little bit for me. He was the more proactive fighter as opposed to being reactive. But again, I haven't watched the fight back. I have to make that abundantly clear. I would need to watch it back without commentary to focus on it. But for me, that second round was about the guy who was pushing the action more. And you can make a compelling argument for Idrisov as well. Again, it shows just how evenly matched fighters are in that flyweight division. You talk about the pace. That pace is sustained from second one of the first round right up to the final bell of the third round or the fifth round if it's being a championship fight. But again, flyweight division just gets me excited because of the level of quality that we have, and at one stage thought of as kind of like the red-headed stepchild of the mixed martial arts divisions. Not that there's anything wrong with being a red-headed stepchild by any stretch of the imagination, but right now flyweight divisions are in the ascendancy, and it's great that Brave Combat Federation is the global mixed martial arts promotion that's really giving these flyweight fighters a platform, putting them in a co-main event spot. Right. It's great to see.
Yeah, and like Kieran said, it only aids Brave Combat Federation and the fighters around the world knowing that they're always going to be treated fairly with Brave Combat Federation. And that's one of the big concerns of a fighter is, hey, they're kind of helpless in a way. How am I going to be treated by this organization? Do they have my back? Are they looking out for my safety? Brave checks every box there is. And if you talk to any fighter who's fought in Brave, they will tell you they have never been treated better with an organization than Brave.
Absolutely, that's the goal of Brave Combat Federation. It's to reform the sport of mixed martial art, and big part of that is to see how we can bring better rules, better governance, better regulations into the sport, and that's why one of the biggest reasons of why we even introduced unfamiliar weight classes like super lightweight and super welterweight was a part of that initiative that Brave Combat Federation has. But sometimes a lot of people don't know that our referees and judges are independent organizations that does their job, and when you have organizations that are at the highest level, we just have to sit back and let the top experts do their job. But while doing their job as well, I'll just throw this at Kirik, how difficult is it for today's judges to score a fight because of the changes? Like we're looking at this fight and seeing that takedowns are not scored the same way it used to be once upon a time.
Yeah, I've reffed and judged over 500 professional MMA bouts in my home state of Massachusetts in the USA. When MMA first became legalized, I did all of officials training at first, so I do know the rules pretty well, and I do know their evolution. But Combat Commission Worldwide, the team that Brave Combat Federation brings in here to run things, knows them considerably better than I do. I wish that wasn't true, but when I have discussions with them, it's really at the breaking edge of the sport. And I think there are times when I'm thinking as a judge a little bit more from years ago than today, because the Combat Commission Worldwide that everywhere governs Brave Combat Federation is at the next level, and I say that with humility. I wish it wasn't true. I wish I was a little bit better than I am, but they're just the best in the world, and the right decisions are happening, and the fights are stopped when they should be stopped, not too early, not too late. And on fight stoppages, there were some great ones. Stopping a fight perfectly is impossible, because you've got two things that are competing with each other. You've got the fighter's health and safety, but it's a hurting game. They're trying to punch each other. They're trying to hit each other. And then you've got a fighter's livelihood on this side. He's got to make a living. He gets paid twice as much. He gets paid half if he loses that fight. You win, you get twice as much. So you're trying to balance health and safety with the man's livelihood, how he feeds his children, how he puts a roof over his children's head. And it's impossible. But somehow our referees just managed to do it. They just managed to stop it exactly when it's going to happen. And when I say stop it, it's not just say, hey, break, break. They drive their body right in between the two fighters so that there's not a split-second late shot that lands. And at least once, Techie Larkin did it and took a shot to the ribs that hurt him for months.
Yeah.
Was it Fajro?
Yeah.
Kerrick, you talk about the significance and importance of a referee stopping a fight at the right time. I want to talk a little bit about not stopping a fight at the right time as well.
Right.
This brings us to our main event of the night.
Yep.
The deepest guillotine I have seen, and I cannot remember. Bogatov's head was turning purple. He looked like a berry about to burst. Both his hands were locked in, so he wouldn't have been able to tap, and if his arm had have gone limp, you wouldn't have been able to tell because it is trapped. The corner of Nemet Abrashitov were shouting, he's out, he's out, he's out. He wasn't out. Aaron Wallace identified that the fighter was still live, still active, and continued. So yes, the significance of knowing when to stop a fight is huge, but it's also just as important as the significance of knowing when not to stop a fight.
It was brilliant on his part. I mean, the combination of Decky Larkin and Aaron Wallace, I mean, everybody, first of all, knows that they're going to be safe and taken care of. But, man, they made the right decisions every time. And that is so huge because everybody did think that he was out. A lot of people did because his legs weren't moving as well from that guillotine. But he had that belief and he had that insight. And there's something there that you can't teach. And literally, that could have made or broke the gentleman's career if he would have stopped it at that time. And then look what happens.
People forget Aaron Wallace was a great fighter back in his day, a multiple-time Irish national champion, a bronze medalist at the IMAFs in either 2015 or 2016. And the only reason he didn't go on to compete for the gold is because he wasn't medically cleared. So
that's it.
Yeah.
Or he would have gotten gold.
Or he would have got gold. So,
yeah.
So shout out to Aaron Wallace, a great fighter, an even better referee.
No, definitely. What a fight main event. I mean, it's not, we talk about the experts doing their jobs and at the highest level, but it's not always easy. It's not always easy when you have the transition happening, when the rules are changing, when people are having different opinions about what should be valued more. And we were discussing about the 12 to 6 elbows, the previous show we were having, and we were discussing about why that shouldn't, it's a stupid rule, and when we discuss about that and when we have those opinions and those transitions or the changes are happening, what were decided decades ago, sometimes it's not easy to make those decisions happen, right? And that's what we saw in the main event. It was a close fight.
Yep.
It could have gone either ways. How did you score that fight?
I had Abdurashidov winning that fight. We have now 2 champions from Kyrgyzstan.
Absolutely.
And you talk about a country that is so hungry for showcasing themselves to the world. Brave has been able to do that like no other. But that I had him winning. It was an incredible fight. It was the skill of Bogatov going against the relentless heart and determination of Nemet. And man, everybody left that building saying, "What a night! What an incredible night once again that we pulled off with Brave Combat Federation." And I wanted to touch real quick on what we had talked about before. When Brave goes to a different country as well, that country is going to prosper forever from that relationship. That's something that most promotions, I would say, don't have. It's always a hit and run, and they're gone. Are they going to come back? We don't know. With Brave, you're part of the family. When we come to you, you are part of our family tree. Not for now, but forever.
Definitely, because it's never about the economics. When we go into a country, it's always about sports development. And most of the organization that's out there looks at and says, TV deal, sponsors, get me this list, and then we will decide to go into another country. And that's exactly why nobody has been able to globalize their organization as much as Brave Combat Federation. And that's the simple difference. We look at the interest for mixed martial art. We look at the groundwork which local organizations, local media has been doing for years for the sport of mixed martial art, and that's what we look at. And most importantly, the fighters, 100%. We say that one of the biggest talents of mixed martial art fighters to come out of Asian continent is Central Asia, and you can see the results when you're looking at Kubanza and Nemeth now. It's unbelievable what kind of talents they have, and there's so much more there in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tajikistan. The talents are limitless. You just need to make sure that we are there on ground, hosting events, working with the local partners, and scouting the best athletes and giving them global exposure. And that's why, with that being the vision, I think that's what makes us very different. Yes, Nemeth. We knew how dangerous he was. We know how dangerous he was. We spoke about the only way to, stop this fight is to put Roman to sleep, but he didn't have to do that. He tried to, 100%. He tried to with the guillotine choke. I mean, he tried in every single way. But Roman, how tough is that guy?
He's a dog. He's an absolute dog. What this man can do, he's willing to eat 3, 4, 5 solid shots to try and get in on a single. And even then when he has that single and he ends up in that 50-50 position where he's put his opponent on his backside, but his opponent could also hit a switch, he's just incrementally breaking the will of his opponent inch by inch, trying to get the takedown. You can't teach that. That's not something that everybody has, that indomitable, unbreakable human spirit. And yeah, he's such a gamer, but the technical advantage, ever so slightly by a hair, went to Nemeth. And right now, as you say, we have 2 champions from Kyrgyzstan. And I defy you to try and find a post on Brave Combat Federation social media that does not have a Kyrgyz flag somewhere. True. Every post, even if it's nothing to do with Kyrgyzstan flag, Kyrgyzstan flag, Kyrgyzstan flag. So again, and it speaks to the point you made so eloquently, Carlos. Brave Combat Federation don't identify regions for economic interest, for self-interest in that regard. How many global promotions have been to Uzbekistan? How many global promotions have been to Kazakhstan multiple times? We're going back to Colombia. How many major promotions have consistently been in Colombia? Indonesia. That shows that the purpose of Brave Combat Federation is so much bigger than just self-interest and self-business interest. I say it once and I will say it again. It is about leaving an indelible imprint on the global mixed martial arts landscape of the area that we are in, not just for that one time, not just to do something good for the guys that don't get the fights that one time. It's about building sustainability and building long-lasting relationships. And that's what we're seeing with the likes of Kubanza being a champion, with the likes of Nemeth Abrashitov being a champion. And Brave Combat Federation is so much bigger than the fights. It's incredible.
No, definitely. We speak about the countries that no global organizations have gone to, countries like Pakistan, Uzbekistan, and also one of the things that we're looking at in the future is also to host a lot more Brave international combat weeks. And when we speak about Colombia, definitely no international organization in mixed martial has gone to Colombia, but to go into Colombia and also create a Pan Am championship with Brave International Combat Week for the first time in the history of the American continent, I think that is going to be a festival because it talks about an entertaining Brave Combat Federation event. We have the title fight with Nkosi and Shorty Torres that I'm really looking forward to. But at the same time, it's also going to be a festival because the best talents in the whole of Pan America is going to be there, looking at Brave Combat Federation with a brand of Brave around them wherever they look, with the hope that they are going to be competing in this organization when they turn pro. But this is the stage set for them to show that they're the best in Pan America at the amateur level. But with talking about the countries that international organizations have never gone, where there is a country where everybody is looking forward to going to, and that is one of the biggest MMA market today in Europe, is France. September 7th, Nantes Brave Combat Federation is going to have a debut in France, and that is a country that all the organizations want to go. It is one of the biggest market, and when you host your first event in France, in Nantes, in partnership with HBC Nantes, which is one of the greatest handball teams it's like the Barcelona of handball, and you're going to partner with them and mix two sports together and introduce MMA to Nantes. It is the biggest opportunity for French fighters to come in and compete there. And there is no easy way to earn that ticket. And I think in Brave 72, 2 French fighters
both win.
Earned that ticket.
Yeah, nothing was given at all. I want to talk a little bit about Yanis Gamori, if I may. He was coming against Mimosh Raza. Mimosh is one of the toughest gunslingers we have in Brave Combat Federation. He is not an easy fight for anybody. Not only that, but Yanis Gamori was coming up in weight to take this fight because he knew what the potential implications of the fight could be. He showed incredible strength in the clinch, and let's talk about that finish. If he had mistimed that by a millisecond, we'd be talking about how he lost via DQ. But the timing on that, just to hit the knee at that picture-perfect moment, not only earned the win, but earn his place on the main card of Brave Combat Federation 74 in Nantes, France, his homeland. That's a huge opportunity, and it's something I know personally he is absolutely relishing. And as you said, Mr. Shahid, the landscape of French MMA has just opened up completely. I've been fortunate enough to call fights there, and I can see the thirst, hunger, and love that the French people have for mixed martial arts, and this is going to be an incredible celebration of the sport, of the culture, a marriage between 2 incredible organizations, Brave Combat Federation and Hexagon MMA. I cannot wait for this fight. Genuinely, I'm buzzed for it. I actually just got goosebumps talking about it there, guys. It's going to be a great night of fights.
August 12th in Colombia, September 7th in France. I mean, the stage is set perfectly. Touching base really quick, the 2 French warriors that won, you couldn't write a better script for us now going there in September. It's just perfectly aligned. So,
Are you practicing your French?
Jonte le pips à la wow. Li patois, à l'ouetéon, jonte le pips.
Je ne comprends pas le français parce que c'est très difficile.
All right, so that's what we're doing.
Pepe Le Pew. Merci beaucoup.
The thing that I love about the fighters that have earned their spot on the French card, nothing was given. We talked about the difficulty of the fight, the potential for Yanis Gamori not to win that fight. In Ilyas Joun taking on Oyas Askariev. Oyas Askariev is, again, one of the toughest guys. We talked about his lineage in Brave Combat Federation, defeating the former champion Lucas Martins, taking Kubanza all 5 rounds while he had food poisoning, then sending Rolando D into retirement. This by no means was a gimme fight, and the assuredness with which he approached it, the calmness, the composure, even he threw everything but, including the kitchen sink, close quarters, throwing elbows, landing knees, flush. He didn't grow frustrated, he didn't punch himself out. What he did punch was his ticket to compete at Brave Combat Federation 74, 7th of September, Nantes, France.
Kirk, I don't know how much more. I mean, that performance from Elias. I mean, it's something else, right? Because, like you said, Phil. I mean, Olzas is not. He's a guy who's fought the champion Kubanich, and while he had food poisoning, he went all the way, and it was a tough and a close fight. But where does that put Elias when he put on that performance? And for me, I think Elias beat Olzas in a better fashion than Kubanich beat Olzas.
We were just talking about that. Yeah, I think what we saw last night was a really it was a career-defining moment for him. I think he's always had great confidence, but he lost that first round too. Went in there hoping he was going to win, believing he was going to win, loses that first round, and somehow came up to the next level and clearly showed that he is the better fighter. There was one other thing that, Hawk, you touched on that I wanted to address for fight fans generally. In our main event, the scores were all over the place. We had 50-45, 49-46, and what I had, 48-47.
I don't agree to 50-45.
No.
The reason that scores can be all over the place is that, and it's a problem in mixed martial arts, if you have good matchmaking, we've got brilliant matchmaking in Brave Combat Federation, fights are typically very, very even. In an even fight, it can be one submission attempt or even one big punch or knee or elbow that decides a round. It's close, it's close. And the problem is judges are not sitting side by side. They're all in different places. And they literally see a different fight than the one somebody sees on television.
Yeah, that's a great point.
And I've been a judge. I've sat cage side, and then I've watched a fight later on a television broadcast, and it looks like a completely different fight. Because the TV has multiple camera angles, and the producer is always cutting, so you can see everything that happens. And when you're sitting in one place, let's say it's a submission attempt. You'll see a choke, and you're like, that choke's pretty close. But the judge on the far side only sees a back. He just sees somebody's back and their butt and their feet. He doesn't know, was it close, was it not? Was it a choke or was it just a seatbelt? I don't know. So when you get screwy scores like that, typically it's because there was perfect matchmaking. The two people were very, very close. The rounds were decided on some very short moments, and each judge sees a different fight because they're positioned in different places. And yeah, I just wanted everybody who's watching this to understand. Typically, when you get screwy judging scores in mixed martial arts, it's because each judge sees a different fight. They all three see something different from the one the fans see on television, but they also see different fights from each other.
What's a potential fix then? Because I have my theory, but you guys have a lot more experience in mixed martial arts than I do, so I'd like to hear what you think could be a potential fix.
I'd like for judges to get the television feed because producers do. There are downsides to it. Maybe it will distract them. I think one thing that hurts judges is when they can hear the audience. If the audience is biased towards a certain fighter, that fighter throws a kick and misses, and the audience is going to lose their mind with screaming.
Or commentary if it's a closed event as well. That's
Or commentary if it's a closed event. But I would like for judges I'd like for them to get multiple angles, and I'd like for them not to hear the audience. And I'd like to see if those two things made a difference. And they might not, but I would like to see it experimented on.
I've always thought a potential fix could be having the three separate judges in separate rooms, potentially not cage side, have them separate rooms with a monitor, no sound, can't hear the commentary, can't hear the crowd, an invigilator standing with them, and take their scores from there, because then that negates the issue with angles, and negates the issue with unintentional subconscious bias with the likes of an audience, with the likes of commentary. But again, these aren't my kind of decisions to make. These are just, I'm sure that there is flaws in that kind of a suggestion, but I get your point about angles, because I judge myself back home in Ireland, and sometimes what I see is exponentially different to what my colleague will see sitting in a different area of the cage. So it is a problem, not just with that one fight, it's a problem in mixed martial arts.
As long as we're talking about judging, It's just a fact in any business process. If human beings are involved, sometimes you're going to get errors. That's just how life is. I personally would like to see, at least for big bouts, I'd like to see 5 judges rather than 3. It's very easy for one judge to go off the reservation, and sometimes it's rare, but sometimes 2 judges can be a little bit weird. You're never going to have a case where all 3 are completely goofy. So I would actually like to see 5 judges, which is typical for a lot of sports like figure skating, like gymnastics, a whole lot of sports that are decided by judges. A 3's not enough, and I think it's not enough for figure skating. I think it's probably not enough for mixed martial arts either. I'd like to see 5.
I definitely agree. Yeah, I think all the points are amazing. I also think that we have to look a little bit more deeper into the 10-9 system itself.
That's a great point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But I think going back to the Elias fight, I think his performance was something else. We speak about Olza's toughness, how tough he is, as mentally tough in terms of taking fights in the short notice, going and fighting while he has food poisoning with the champion, knocking out a striker in Rolando D. I just felt like Elias changed that image slightly with the way he performed, and I think that speaks volume of how good Elias' performance was. I know that there was a really good motivation behind it when you have to go and win this fight in a best performance, to showcase your performance at the highest level, not just win a fight to go and fight in France, but make it look exciting that you want to be there. But I think when you look at the division now, lightweight division, who would you like to see Elias take on in France? We have the likes. Okay, Kubanza, the champion. We want to see him. I think this puts a case out there for Elias to fight Kubanza. But at the same time, you're looking at Ahmed Sherwaniev, Kamil Magomedov, Lucas Martins, all of them in line. And now there's no question about Mahsen, and he wants to climb that top 5 ladder as quickly as possible.
I don't know who would be next for the champion, but Malshane and Elias Jarun could be an interesting matchup. I like that. But at lightweight, you have such a depth of talent, and everybody can make a valid claim. The former champion, Lucas Martins, he has a valid claim given what he's already done. Magomedov, what he has done, again, warrants a shot. Whoever you pick, the rest of the division aren't going to be happy, because they'll believe that they have the rightful stake to be the number 1 contender. But if anything, it just shows the levels and talent that we have in every division in Brave Combat Federation.
Well, talking about that, we saw Yanis fight in featherweight, right? Featherweight fight. We've seen the title fight featherweight division. We've seen Omar Salamanov face off after the fight with Neymar. A lot of stories going on in featherweight. I don't know if I heard right, but I thought that Elias was also talking about moving to featherweight.
Yes. In the mix of featherweight, incredible. I get Yanis Gamori is going back down to bantamweight. Bantamweight, a division that has an incredible title fight coming up between Shorty Torres and Nkose and Debele. I want to talk a little bit about that fight for the simple reason that this is an incredible matchup between the veteran Shorty Torres, multiple-time US IMAF champion, world IMAF champion, Nkose and Debele, a man who has had to fight and scrap for absolutely everything he has had. Questions have been asked by the media. How much does Shorty Torres still want to be a fighter? There's a great quote. It's hard to get up and do your miles at 6 a.m. when you're going to bed in silk sheets. Does Shorty Torres still have that fire, that desire to be a world champion? And Nkose Debele is a young fighter who wants everything, who is coming for everything. It's a little bit of the old lion having to maintain his place within the pride, and the young lion just slowly starting to creep up behind him, planning his attack. I really cannot wait for that fight. And Carrick, I'm sure you've got some incredible thoughts on it.
My thoughts on that one are actually pretty simple. I think Shorty Torres is the better fighter, and I think in a 3-round fight, He might come out slow. He typically does. He could lose the first round. I think he would definitely win the second 2 rounds. But in those deep waters, in those championship rounds, as you said, is he still getting up at 4 a.m. and going out and doing his road work? He's got so many opportunities now. He's got so much love in his home city of Chicago for him. If he goes into those deep waters, what's going to happen? And that, I just don't know. I do know what's going to happen with his opponent. Cozy Nabele is just going to be better and better and better. That kid lives, eats, breathes. He doesn't do anything else but mixed martial arts, and he's clean. He's not. He doesn't touch creatine, doesn't touch testosterone, doesn't touch anything. He's just young, lives clean, gets plenty of sleep, but he trains all the time. And so over a 5 round, I cannot give you a prediction. As I said, I can give you a prediction in a 3-round fight. Shorty Torres, 29-28. I cannot give you a prediction for a 5-round fight.
And the amazing thing is, guess who Nkosi's training partner is this entire time? Kubanza.
True.
So he's going to go into that cage with Shorty feeling like, wow, this is a huge difference. Of course, Shorty technically is a very, very highly skilled wrestler. But it's the length and the strength and the athleticism of Nkosi going against the wrestling. Nkosi's got the striking, Shorty has the wrestling. It's going to be amazing because Nkosi is a lot bigger than people think he is. When you see him in person, you're shocked that he can make it the weight he does. Mm. And he's super strong. Even though he's lean, he's way stronger than he looks. And he does have some incredible takedown defense as well. If he can keep Shorty in a striking match, it's going to be very, very interesting to see. Colombia, going back to Colombia and Bogota in particular, that's going to be just amazing because those people over there are so humble, so gracious, so happy that Brave Combat Federation is there. All they've been doing is talking since we were there last, right, is when are you coming next? So
true.
That's the kind of feeling there. But for the title fight with Shorty and Nkosi, you can't get a better matchup than that. They're so different stylistically that it's going to make the most entertaining fight possibly of all time.
You see, talking as a fan of mixed martial art, there are some fights that starts annoying you that it doesn't come sooner, and you're like, how many more days to go, When is the weekend coming? Not because you want to enjoy the weekend, because you want to put that week behind you, and you want to start the next week as soon as possible because you want to get closer to the fight. For me, this fight between Shorty Torres and Nkosi is that fight for me because I feel like I've seen them both grow. Mm-hmm. When we talk about Shorty Torres, for me, it's not a striker versus wrestling because Shorty has the mind of a striker. He is if you look at him, you can actually see a Mexican boxer in him. Mm-hmm. He walks in, he moves his head, he gets into you, and that's exactly what a taller fighter does not want, is somebody getting into his range and moving into him every single second and walking into him, literally walking into him, getting his forehead out there, chin down. You punch me. If I got to take it, I'll take it on my forehead, but I'm going to walk in, and if you miss, I'm going to get closer into you, and I'm going to keep coming forward to you, and you want to defend the takedowns as well. So that's for me. I think he has a striker's mentality. No question about how good his wrestling is, and there's no question about how good his jiu-jitsu is as well. Yeah. But also the amount of experience he has in terms of the places he has trained around the world, gyms he's trained around the world. When I've seen him in the first time when he came to Bahrain to train at KHK Gym, we've had the likes of Khabib, Islam, Alex Soto, Pete Williams, and we had all of those guys together in a camp with John Kavanagh at the same time. We had our SBG team members, James Gallagher, Franz Malambo. It was a crazy team, right? And on top of that, you had the Dagestan Warriors there as well, So it was and for me, I was like, that's when I had this first click that I need to stop fighting, That after seeing those talent, and you're looking at it and you're seeing Alex Soto, who was ex-UFC fighter, Bellator fighter, and he's a machine. Right. But when I saw him spar with Shorty, this guy is super athletic. You can't take him down. You can lift him up because you're bigger than him. So we all could lift Shorty up, but we couldn't get him on his back, and it was not easy to get Shorty on his back. He was super athletic. But then there's an important question about Shorty. We talk about all of this. We know that he's a two-time world champion IMF, 2-division champion in Titan FC. He's seen it all. He's gone to the highest level. There's so much inside of him, and the question comes in, does he still have the hunger? But there's one thing that I really admire about Shorty is his honesty. He's not going to come out and say that I am 100% if he's not 100%. Right. He has a problem, he has challenges in his life, and he's gone through a lot of challenges in his life, and he's been open about it, he's been honest about it, and he's shared that with his fans, he's shared that with the public, and he's vocal and activist about seeking help. And I love that about him. And so when I have this conversation behind the scenes, not in front of the camera, when I have this conversation with Shorty, every time we've had this conversation since the years where he had to he was not able to fight for several reasons, and which he was honest about. But today he comes in and he says, if I was honest about that, my challenges and my problems, trust me when I tell you behind the scenes that I am hungry and I want this, and I want to come back and make up for all those lost time, and I want to be as good as I was before, and I want to prove it to myself. And that's why he was completely behind us to make that fight happen. And unfortunately, Nkosi couldn't get the visa at the time, and that fight was couldn't happen. But Shorty was ready to get back in immediately, and he was like, I would fight anybody else. I would fight the next fight. So with his honesty, he's 100% hungry, and I'll vouch for that, because that's how Shorty is. What you see is what you get, and he's honest about that. But at the same time, you're seeing a young kid evolve in Nkosi, who was an African champion, gone through the same IMF ranks, which makes this event even more interesting that it's happening on the Pan American Week in Colombia. Right. And it's just unbelievable how everything gels together. And Nkosi, African champion, but the evolution that Nkosi had with Brave Combat Federation, that we've seen him start, and every fight that we see him, he's different. He's got... Absolutely, and there was a time when I was questioning his grappling skills, and then he comes into the next fight and he's different. How much he evolves, how fast he evolves, it's unbelievable. And here he is fighting for the title, and that's why I think the question is, when you look at Shorty Torres, you feel like he's a guy who's done everything, because of the amount of experience and places he's been. And then you're looking at Shorty Nkosi, and you think that, okay, that's the hungry kid, that's the kid that's evolving fast. And it looks like that fight where the young kid, the next kid generation, the future is actually going to come and take out Shorty Torres. But it's interesting. I don't know if that's going to be the case, because I think the levels of experience, I think Shorty has so much more experience and seen something 10 times more bigger than what Nkosi have seen. So,
speaking about levels, do you think that the altitude in Bogota is going to play a factor? It's 2,600 meters above sea level. Do you think, you've talked about this being a championship fight, that it could potentially go into the 4th and 5th round? I've never fought at altitude. I don't know the kind of impact that can have upon a human being. Do you think that's something that no one's talking about at the minute? Do you think that is a potential X factor in this fight? Because we go back to look at Cain Velasquez. There was sea level Cain Velasquez. There was above sea level Cain Velasquez when he fought in Mexico, and he was a shadow of his former self. I think this is a potential X factor in the fight that could have serious ramifications.
Very interesting. Chicago is basically at sea level, and Johannesburg is at about 2,500 meters. Johannesburg is at altitude. I've trained there a lot, and the first few days it hurts. You get a painful headache, and your throat hurts, and you're breathing twice as hard as normal. Shorty, Master Bob, if you guys are listening, think about finishing up your camp at altitude right there. Maybe show up a little bit early. If you don't, the deep waters may be deeper.
You made a good point. I think with the Shorty fight and Nkosi, that first round is key. Shorty knows he starts out slow. He knows that he does it. He's trying to correct that. But if he can start out quickly and have a good first round, I think that'll set the pace for him and the tone for the fight.
I totally agree.
do have to agree with you on what he's done for people around the globe. I mean, being vulnerable like he is and talking about mental health issues that not only affect him, but affect everybody. So everybody can relate to what he does. Team Shorty, you know, they're there for you. He's a super accessible guy as well. He'll talk to anybody.
Do you think that gets misinterpreted though? Do you think because we all know Shorty on a personal level?
True.
I'll call him a friend, hand on
Yeah.
heart, I'll call him a friend. He's one of the nicest, most approachable, as you've said, amiable, friendly people. He speaks about struggles with mental health. Do you think that perhaps, that kindness, that humility could be mistaken by weakness and people forget that you're dealing with a badass fighter?
100%. I mean, he is. You would never know that he can do what he can do in the cage from meeting him outside the cage. That's how Shorty Torres is. Polite, humble, generous. I mean, he has all the great qualities that you would think, but he's an absolute killer inside the cage.
100%. I think that's why when I say about his striking mentality, Mexican boxer mentality, that he comes in, moves in, and you can see that when he fights. And I think that's also most of the times that he goes in, and sometimes that aggression and that mentality of wanting to get in and love fighting, you know, he's there to fight, and it's just not always about just going and winning. He loves to fight, and I think that mentality is also something that could be a challenge and has been a challenge before. But Carlos, I think what you said about the first round, I think that's very important. In the past, we've seen him start the round slow, but definitely I think that's going to be a big factor in this fight. But listen, Nkosi, I think one thing we know is he knows Shorty Torres really well. Mm-hmm. You know, he's been watching him, he's been seeing him, he's been part of that, whether it was Shorty at Flyweight or at amateur IMMAF level or today at bantamweight division. I think Nkosi knows him really, really well. I don't know if Shorty knows Nkosi as much, but I know that Shorty is one of those people that loves to analyze, break down fights, and is a scientist when it comes to preparing for his fight.
I was going to say...
Predictions, gentlemen?
So, prediction... war.
Prediction, pain.
But I genuinely believe this is one of those transgenerational fights. Shorty Torres was winning world titles before Nkosi Ndebele had his first pro fight. Undoubtedly, Shorty Torres is someone Nkosi Ndebele has looked up to. It comes down to just how bad does Shorty Torres wants it, especially at the lighter weight classes. We see that it's not like heavyweight where a fighter can fight into his 40s like Andrei Arlovsky. When you start to get in and around that 31, 32, 33 kind of mark as a lighter fighter, it's just human nature, it's just genetics. Things start to dissipate just a little bit. So you have to question, how much is time going to play a factor in this fight? Altitude, desire. Both these fighters have incredible skills. We talked about people just thinking of Shorty as a wrestler. He's a multiple-time US national kickboxing champion. That's a little wrinkle people forget. So he's got hands, he's got the striking, he's got the knees, the shins, the feet to do it. There are so many intricate variables to this fight that it's not very often I sit on the fence, but right now I can't pick a winner.
Yeah, it's tough. I'm not going to pick a winner. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the fans are going to be the winners.
The fans will be the winners.
So you're
of
joining me on the
Brave Nation.
fence? You're going to join me on the fence? Not a problem. I'll keep you a space.
Oh, it's going to be fun, man.
Gentlemen, while we have a moment, I wanted to dedicate this brave 72 to a dear friend who passed away. He's a referee, Ryan Spink. He was just in Serbia with us doing IMF. I work with him all the time in California. And I just wanted to say to his wife, Stacy, we are here for you. Our MMA community is one. We are family. And however you need, whatever you need anytime, let us know, because Brave Combat Federation has your back as well. And you have the world behind you. His loss was he was coming from an event. His car broke down. And so he pulled off to the side. And while he was waiting for AAA to show up, a drunk police officer off duty coming from a police function hit the car at full impact, like at 60 miles an hour or more. And his wife survived, but Ryan didn't. So, I mean, we're just heartbroken in all of California and everywhere that he's gone. So a man of 6 different black belts. in his arsenal. He was Joe Daddy Stevenson's director of operation at Cobra Kai. So that just shows what kind of an impact he's made on everyone else's life. And now that he's gone, it truly shows like how fragile life is, how incredibly that it can turn in 1 second. And now Stacy's there without her man and her love. And we will do everything we can to make this as seamless as possible. But I just wanted to say our hearts break for you. I missed the funeral to be here, but I thought I could do more in light of celebrating Ryan's name and celebrating his life and getting that on the air than not. So a shout out to you, Stacy, and our entire family in memory of our brother, Ryan Spink.